Looking for Alaska by John Green was published in 2005 and tells the story of Miles Helter, who is tired of living his safe life without friends. So he decides to attend Clover Creek boarding school in Alabama. He goes there in hopes to seek more of himself and about the great perhaps, which was written by a dead poet named Francois Rabelais. He meets 3 students, the Colonel, Takumi, and Alaska Young, who take him around the campus and bring him along to their mischief-making hangouts. The book was banned in 2012 across a number of schools in Tennessee County. It was banned due to offensive language, the character's overconsumption of alcohol, and sexually explicit descriptions. A school in Kentucky also wanted the book removed from its curriculum. A parent said that it would lead kids to experiment with pornography, sex, drugs, alcohol, and profanity. They described the book as filthy and disliked John Green's use of mental pornography and the number of times the F word was used in the novel. John Green made a comment about his book being banned in a video that was posted on his own YouTube channel. He argues, "Text is meaningless without context. What usually happens with Looking for Alaska is that a parent chooses one page of the novel to send to an administrator, and then the book gets banned without anyone who objects to it having read more than one particular page." He also says, "If you have a worldview that can be undone by a novel, let me submit the problem is not with the novel." I chose to read this book because I'm a big fan of John Green's novels, and a friend recommended it to me, so I had to pick it up. The book did have many sexual references, and some conversations included swear words. However, because readers get to experience the development of characters' relationships, we start to understand that the sexual references are only meant to grow the bonds of their friendships. More importantly, the author only uses sex as a way to show teenagers' maturation and explores a coming-of-age story. I don't think John Green is promoting drinking or smoking, which were included in the novel, because of the way he portrays his character's mature knowledge. Alaska Young often says, "Y'all smoke to enjoy, I smoke to die." Her character clearly knows the risks of smoking and that it can lead to death. Miles often talks about how difficult it is to run after you become a smoker. Lastly, the characters drink, however they experience many negative consequences. This book should not be banned because teenagers are engaged and thoughtful readers and not the type to make bad decisions after reading a novel. Many teenagers are uninformed about the risks of drinking and smoking, and they will learn and understand these risks through their peers and not their parents. Regardless of whether parents restrict their children from reading the novel, these behaviors occur regularly and they are surrounded by it because ultimately the content deals with universal issues such as friendship, trust, and depression, which is not often taught and spoken about in the stressful teen world. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Taylor, and today we'll be talking about Banned Book Week. Banned Book Week is from September 25th to October 1st and is a week where people come together to celebrate their freedoms of being able to read whatever they wish, while others in the world aren't as fortunate. This week's Banned Book Week theme is celebrating diversity. So for Banned Book Week, I chose to read I Am J after getting a recommendation from one of my friends. I Am J is a controversial book published in 2011 that focuses on the life of Jay, who is a transgender teen. Personal experiences with the LGBTQ youth in Los Angeles and her transgender foster daughter motivated the author Chris Beam to write this novel. The initial resistance towards this book was generated after its addition to the 2013 State of California recommended reading list, where I Am J became the first book featuring a transgender main to be added. This book was later added to the restricted reading list in Great Vince Colleyville School District in Texas, where critics stated that this book was raping the innocence of our children and that it was a promotion of sexual anarchy. So, what makes this book so controversial? The book is focused around a Puerto Rican transgender teen, male-born female, named Jay, and his journey to find acceptance. All throughout Jay's life, he's always wanted to be a boy, but his female body parts always made him feel otherwise. After an incident with his best friend leaves him friendless, with no one to turn to, Jay embarks on a mission to discover who he truly is and what it means to really love yourself. Because this book is written in third person, it allows the reader to be able to understand Jay's thoughts clearly and also understand what people on the outside think of him. This is really important as the book is really oriented around how you deal with other people except you, so it was really interesting to read this point of view. Also, more importantly, this book allowed me to gain more knowledge on a topic that I'm rather uninformed in. This book made me understand the struggles that many transgenders face and actually made me become more empathetic and understanding towards them, as I now knew how they thought, I guess. Now, in response to its position on the restricted reading list in the Great Vince-Clariville School District in Texas, all I can say is that I cannot deny its importance as a piece of literature that should be open for students to read. Firstly, this book allows students like myself to become more aware and understanding towards transgenders. I believe that this is so crucial as it creates a safe environment for people to want to come out and truly be themselves. And secondly, to transgender teens who feel isolated and have no one who understands them, this book can provide them with reassurance that they're not alone and that they can be who they truly are. That is why I believe that this book should not be banned. It teaches important morals to teens regardless of their sexual orientation. Just because a certain specific group of people don't agree with the storyline or its plot doesn't mean that it should be restricted and that others should be deprived of reading this illuminating story. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Sophia and today I'll be talking to you about The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold, which is a story about a girl seeing the aftermath of her death in the lives of her friends and family. So the story takes place in 1973 and begins with the rape and murder of Susie Salmon on her way home from school one day. It then goes on to show her watching down from heaven and seeing how the lives of her friends, family, and even murder are affected from her death. It's full of both mystery and drama, while also centering around the themes of coping with loss and attempting to move on. So The Lovely Bones was first banned in 2008 by a Massachusetts mom who claimed that it was too inappropriate for younger kids due to its portrayal of heaven, the justice system, family values, and its use of some explicit content. According to parent Diane Thompson, I read it cover to cover. They say this book is about healing and hope, which it's not. The guy committing the crime doesn't get punished, and the mom runs away from her family. This is partly true since the murderer doesn't get punished for what he does. However, the second claim about the mom running away is not so true since the family ends up learning more from their separation and becoming closer from the experience. Another complaint came from Cadwell Stone from the American Library Association, who said, "A book that is appropriate for an 8th or 9th grader might create concern for the parents of a 5th grader who might not have access to the work." But this concern is really relative to the person reading the book since there are still many important values the story teaches readers, some of which could be important to younger kids. There were also complaints about the graphic details in the sexual scenes of the story, which are inappropriate at times but do not end up taking away from the overall theme and message of the story. Additionally, in the novel, Sebold describes heaven as a place personalized for each individual, which some people believed was questioning some religious beliefs. But Sebold responded to this by saying, "To me, the idea of heaven would give you certain pleasures, certain joys, but it's very important to have an intellectual understanding of why you want those things." So Susie's heaven in particular serves to show how much she was stuck in the past and her unableness to move on in order to finally really rest in peace. So The Lovely Bones is really written in a unique way, and Sebold has a really clear perspective that makes this book a really interesting read. It's really fascinating seeing the way that Susie's family deals with her death, since some people sort of try to ignore it, while other people just envelop themselves in it and become obsessed with the murder. But by not making this book available to readers, students could really miss out on an opportunity to learn more about the power of family and some of the very real dangers in our world today. So even though The Lovely Bones still has some controversy surrounding it, I do not think it should be banned, since the final message of the story is one about appreciating life and not getting stuck in the past, but learning to move on and in that way living a happy and fulfilling life. Thank you.
Chose to read for Banned Book Week was The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman. The Golden Compass is the first book in the His Dark Material trilogy. Written by Philip Pullman in 1995, The Golden Compass tells a story about Lyra's adventures in dystopian England. After her friend goes missing, she sets out to find answers and learn about the secrets that are being kept from her about her family. The series was ranked 8th in the top 100 banned/challenged books from 2000 to 2009. The book was written to be viewed as a warning or a way for the author to connect and reach out to individual readers and hopefully open them up to the religious and political world around them. The book was said to promote atheism and went against the beliefs of religion, and in specific, the Catholic Church. In The Golden Compass, an organization exists that closely resembles and has similar ideals as Christianity and other monotheistic religions. However, the organization is portrayed as the villains of the story, which caused uproar in the religious community, especially in the United States. Philip Pullman has said in an interview that he is not against the ideas of religion, but what horrible and violent acts are committed in the name of their beliefs. He said in an interview with theCuckoos, "I have said that his dark material is not fantasy, but stark realism, and my reason for this is to emphasize what I think is an important aspect of the story, namely the fact that it is realistic in psychological terms." I thought that The Golden Compass was a very enjoyable book, with an interesting plot that also connected to the real world, and had the same political and religious beliefs of important figures around the world. The story of Lyra is one of adventure and mystery, which kept me wanting to read more. Reading banned books expands the reader's knowledge, and also opens up a whole new door that used to be closed to them. I agree with embracing banned books, because it is interesting to see what other countries deem inappropriate, and have my own judgment on the book itself.
Banned Books Week is an annual event celebrated every September and is meant to embrace the freedom to read. This year, I read Naked Lunch. Wrong book. I read Naked Lunch by William Seward Burroughs II, and it depicted the story of a young adult named William Lee and his companion Jane as they fled America after being caught for smuggling drugs and being drug addicts themselves. Throughout this complicated situation, Lee needs to explore new regions and is involved in a lot of peculiar situations. Throughout the rest of the book, William Burroughs, the author, tackles some more controversial topics such as drug culture, homosexuality, as well as prostitution, which were very disputed topics during the 1960s, the time when this novel was written. The author of the book was a writer during the Beat generation and was known for his controversial takes on non-traditional topics, which was most evident in this book, Naked Lunch. The genre of this book is speculative fiction because it contains aspects of realistic fiction, scientific fiction, as well as fantasy. Naked Lunch was banned in Australia on the 3rd of October 1963. It was also banned in both Boston and Los Angeles, and European publishers were harassed for printing and distributing the book. This book was hated in Australia so much that the chairman, E.R. Bryan, described Naked Lunch as one of the crudest books that he has ever read in recent years. Overall, this book was banned because the book's subject matter deals with drug use, sexually explicit acts, and obscene language. And it was banned in the United States because of the obscenity laws. The book was published in 1959, and therefore, during those times, addressing these issues was inconceivable. There have been several appeals to lift the ban over the course of the past 50 years due to the fact that people believe regions are merely censoring topics that should be discussed. In my opinion, the ban was put in an attempt to eradicate books that mention controversial themes, especially those during the 1960s where all of them were considered crimes. My reading experience with this book felt like a roller coaster, as at points I was rooting for William, and at points I was confused as to why I was reading the book. It certainly was a challenging book, especially because it mentioned adult issues. I felt like the book certainly made me more mature in a sense that it put controversial topics on display, and it used the story of a man struggling through these issues in a dystopian society in order to express some of the more controversial disputes in the 20th century. As Laurie Halse Anderson once said, "Censorship is the child of fear and the father of ignorance," and that's why this book shouldn't be banned. Overall, I think that Banned Books Week has had a positive impact on my life because I could personally read something that I wouldn't normally read, as it embraced controversial topics that I wouldn't normally think of reading. And this is why I appreciate Banned Book Week, as it allows people to celebrate the freedom to read.
Hi guys, so I decided to pick up this book thanks to my dear sister Jongmi Lee's recommendation. It's called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey. This is written in 1962, famous literature and a fiction that's also widely taught in multiple high schools. So this book is based in a mental hospital and is narrated by Chief Bromden, who has been in the hospital for multiple years now. People in the ward live quietly under control of the nurses. However, things start to change after McMurphy enters the hospital. He is determined to rebel against the nurse and maybe, expose her a little to alleviate the oppression that the patients were going through. So, through the story, Kesey shows the theme of social conformity, social rebellion, and authority, which are important ideas that teenagers should know. However, to my surprise, the book was actually banned. This novel contains a lot of profanity and sexually explicit comments, which led to it being banned in some high schools such as Ohio and California. For example, a parent was very frustrated that a certain school was choosing this garbage over and over again, referring to the school curriculum where the students had to read One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Another mom of 3 children was concerned about them reading this book because it was violent and showed how easy it is to smother somebody. An interesting aspect to think about is that if this is a book that 11th graders must read in high school, it could mean that they have to read in their IB courses. And if IB, which of course brings sadness and sleep deprivation for students, but most importantly, a worldwide course, allows students to read this, then wouldn't it mean that the book isn't harmful for kids, but could actually be beneficial? But guess what? In my opinion, I could understand why this book could have been banned in some areas because of the reasons I mentioned before, violence and sexual remarks. However, I still believe that students should be exposed to these kind of ideas and, importantly, understand them so that none of the things that the parents are fearing occur. If this book, had been banned everywhere, then the students could not have access to the information that are presented in the book. Adding on, I believe that the value of the themes in the book far outweigh the reasons why the book should be banned. So overall, this book was a great read. I really enjoyed it thoroughly. I would recommend this to readers who love literature and fiction, and most importantly, banned books. So enjoy your banned book week, guys. Make sure to check out one and try out one.
As part of Banned Book Week, I decided to read one and chose to read Little Brother by Cory Doctorow. When I heard that it was simply about a group of technology geeks trying to overthrow the government, I was intrigued in how the book could possibly be banned. The main characters in the book felt that the government took advantage of a terrorist attack to control society. It sounded just like another variation of the Hunger Games or any other overthrowing the government type dystopian novel. The genre of the book is cyberpunk, which is a subgenre of science fiction set in an oppressive society dominated by computer technology. The major themes of the book is fighting for liberty and freedom and the right to privacy. The author of the book, Cory Doctorow, is a Canadian-British blogger, journalist, and science fiction author. He usually writes about code, programming, the digital world, and science fiction, who strongly advocates for liberalizing copyright laws. The book was released in 2008. This book was banned in Booker T. Washington High School in Florida. Originally, all of Booker T. Washington High School students were going to read Little Brother over the summer for a One Book, One School program in 2014. However, the principal of the school decided that it was inappropriate for young adults as most parts of the books include topics like terrorism, challenging authority, loyalty, sex, torture, and fear. As a result of this ban, Cory Doctorow, the author of the book, made the book available online for free and sent approximately 200 copies of his book down to the school. Savage. This book is quite similar in style and mood to many dystopian novels written in this time period. However, the medium in which the characters try to overthrow the government or their approach to it is quite different. I enjoyed reading it and would recommend it to readers interested in technology, dystopian, or science fiction. Personally, I do not see why this book was banned in the first place unless the authority had something to hide from the people. I would understand if the US government decided to ban it, as they were portrayed quite negatively as an extreme control freak. Nevertheless, no book should be banned. Everyone should have access to whatever they want to read. It is about access to text and knowledge. If we start banning books, what will be the limit to taking away access to media of children or even to adults? Banned Book Week is to raise awareness to us all that there are books out there that certain people are trying to get banned, and that is simply wrong. Ultimately, as Oscar Wilde once said, the books that the world calls immoral are the books that show the world its own shame.
read The Glass Castle for Banned Books Week. Banned Books Week is about celebrating the freedom to read and the freedom from censorship. Many books are banned in sometimes even whole countries and also censored, maybe in schools and libraries. The Glass Castle has been banned from 2 high schools, Transverse City Senior West High School and Highland Park High School. It was banned because parents found the material to be too offensive and explicit for their children to read, and they pushed for it to be banned being taught in the classroom. While Jeanette Walls does tackle lots of dark material such as child molestation, child neglect, and even mental illness and sexual abuse, she's telling the truth of her childhood story, and I believe that this should not be censored. Jeanette Walls was supposed to do a book talk at Highland Park High School and expressed her disappointment in the school banning her book, saying that sometimes you have to walk through the muck to get to the message. What I worry is that in order to protect the students, we may be taking away the tools they need to protect themselves later on. The Glass Castle is Jeanette Walls' memoir. I don't think it should be banned anywhere. I think it should still be taught in schools because although the content is pretty dark and, yes, explicit at some times, it is necessary for underprivileged and overprivileged kids to know what it's like to be in her situation and to rise up from above it. Jeanette Walls' story is very dark, and it talks a lot about her family and all of the issues that come with it, but it is also a message of hope and resilience and shows that Jeanette Walls got out of her situation and away from her family, refusing to settle for anything.
There was a thing called heaven, but all the same they used to drink enormous quantities of alcohol. There was a thing called the soul, and a thing called immortality, but they used to take morphia and cocaine. 2,000 pharmacologists and biochemists were subsidized in AF-178. 6 years later, it was being produced commercially. The perfect drug. Euphoric, narcotic, pleasantly hallucinant. All the advantages of Christianity and alcohol, none of their defects. Take a holiday from reality whenever you like, and come back without so much as a headache or mythology. Stability was practically assured. This is a quote from the banned book Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, who graduated with a degree in literature and started writing Brave New World in 1931 and published it in 1932. Brave New World is first and foremost a book about freedom, thinking, and breaking away from the chains you never realized you were in. It is a science fiction dystopian novel set in the far future. I'm reading this book for Banned Book Week, an annual event where readers all over the world join together to protest against the banning of books by reading some of them and publishing book talks just like this one. The book Brave New World itself has been banned in a few different countries, the most notable being Ireland, India, and multiple states in the United States. It has also been accused of plagiarism multiple times. In 1932, it was banned in Ireland for being anti-family and anti-religion, as well as for its language. In 1967, it was banned in India, as the book itself was labeled pornography, and Huxley was labeled a pornographer. In 1980, it was banned in schools in Miller, Missouri, and in 1982, the book was accused of plagiarism by Antoni Smuskiewicz for copying 2 novels written by Miskolas Morlarski. In 1993, the book was attempted to be removed from an unnamed California school's reading list for being centered around negative activity. However, this attempt was unsuccessful. Alternate books were allowed, though, for the students. In 2010, Brave New World was put on the American Library Association's Most Challenged Books list, with the reasons for banning listed as being insensitive, using offensive language, racism, and being sexually explicit. The book itself is quite good, exploring many interesting themes and fears of the future. The writing is quite good as well, and the book itself centers around a future era of humanity which has lost all interest, passion, and curiosity, that being replaced by extreme Pavlovian conditioning by the world government. The book has many parallels with George Orwell's 1984, with a similar theme of a dystopian world and an oppressive government. However, some people note that while George Orwell was scared of everyone being controlled by the government, Huxley was afraid of people simply losing all interest in what other than what they already knew. I would give this book perhaps maybe a 4 out of 5 because the introduction kind of starts off a bit slowly. However, once you start reading more and more and getting deeper into the book, it turns out to be very fascinating.